Hear your favorite NFL legends sharing their stories and insights every week right here on Thursday Night Tailgate with Chris Mascaro and Bob Lazari. Take it away, guys. The door is locked.
There's no way out. And now back with us here on Thursday Night Tailgate is Tony Mandarich. Let me remind you about Tony's background. He is from Oakville, Ontario. He is the highest drafted Canadian-born player in NFL history. He was recruited to play his college ball at Michigan State by then defensive backs coach Nick Saban. He was a first-team All-American, an Outland Trophy finalist, and a two-time Big Ten Lineman of the Year. He was a first-round draft pick, the number 2 overall selection in the 1989 draft by the Green Bay Packers, and he played for the Packers from 89 to 92. Packers released him after the 82 season, left the game for a few years doing some rehab, returned to the NFL in 1996, and he played for the Indianapolis Colts, through the 1998 season, and started all 16 games back in 1997. Tony now runs Tony Mandarich Creatives, which he's a wonderful digital artist, photographer, and public speaker. Folks, I highly encourage you to go on TonyMandarich.com to take a look at some of Tony's work. It is absolutely spectacular, and we are honored he is back with us again tonight here on Thursday Night Tailgate. Good evening, Tony. Chris and Bob here. Thanks for coming back on the show.
Tony. Oh, it's my pleasure. Thanks for having me, guys.
So, Tony, I think everyone believes they know your story, but I think only a few people really know all of the details. And I think that we've been given so much stuff by mainstream media about you and your background, but I don't think people really know the real Tony Mandarich story, from your parents being Yugoslavian immigrants coming to this country, to the steroid and painkiller addiction that you had to overcome, to coming back and playing 3 pretty darn good years with the Colts that happened on the other side of what you call 4 years in hell in your book. And like I say, now you're just an absolutely spectacular photographer and the things that you are doing today. So if you don't mind, what do you want people to know about Tony Mandarich now?
That's a great question. And before I answer that, you had mentioned Nick Saban earlier, and he did pretty good in his career. He did all right after he left Michigan State.
He did.
7 national championships. So who would have thought? I mean, it's always interesting to watch people, coaches, players, that you played with, and then 10, 15, 20, 30 years later, you look at the careers and you go, who would have thought? Like Jeff Saturday, for example, who was a center for the Colts and was an All-Pro for multiple years, the third-string center my last year in Indianapolis, and at times he was on the practice squad. So then to go on and win Super Bowls, become the starter, become an All-Pro, it's such a cool thing to see happen and to see happen in a person's life. But, in regards to your question, I say 80% of me is no different than anybody else. It's, I have a lot of the same interests that people do, a lot of the same, stuff that you're interested in. But I would say, and I'm just throwing out the number 80-20, there's 20% of me that has a voice in my head. And sometimes that voice is a scary voice, and it's like it's almost a voice of accountability. And there's times where there's things that I've done in my life and do in my life that are extreme, and I don't look at them as extreme though. I look at them as if I'm at the studio shooting, or if I'm doing a test shoot, it's not a paid job. It's just, I get a model, whether it's a male or female, we kind of collaborate. We say, hey, this is over like a week period. We say, hey, let's shoot this, this, and this. Let me test this kind of stuff, and we'll see if we can develop some kind of a, interesting look. And basically what it becomes is another tool in the toolbox, which makes you more valuable as far as you bring more value to the client that does pay you. When I'm doing that stuff, I mean, some of that stuff's extreme, and almost all of it comes from the core of my life experience. And, I've had some tremendous highs, and I've had some tumultuous lows, and I feel lucky that I have. I've played in Green Bay, if you want to call it played. I was in Green Bay, totally a train wreck. And then pretty much kicked out of football for 3 years. It got worse, and then got, sober March 23rd of 95. 11 months later, I was even lucky to get an opportunity that anybody would even work out. Philly offered me one, and a great workout with Philly, and then Indianapolis heard, through the grapevine about the workout. They offered me a workout, and Indianapolis wanted to sign me, right then and there. And this was like 11 months after being sober, and I thought to myself, 11 months prior to that, I couldn't get off the couch because I was so messed up and doped up on painkillers. And, it was just, and I had tried, honest to God, I had tried hundreds, and I'm not exaggerating, at least in the upper hundreds, almost 1,000 different ways to get sober. Tricking myself into this, tricking myself into that, just playing little games, of, okay, I won't do this and I won't do that. Or if I do this drug, I won't do this drug because this will be okay. And all it is rationalization, and it's the disease playing tricks on you. And, obviously the solution is, you're not going to get drunk if you don't put the bottles in your mouth. And you're not going to get, that high from painkillers if you don't swallow the pills. So that's first and foremost. Then, there's a saying, if you have a drunk horse thief and you sober him up, what do you have? You still have a horse thief. He's just sober, that's all. So you have to change as a person. You have to change who you're hanging out with. You have to change, all these. If you don't, you're going to go back. Eventually, you're probably going to go back to drinking or drugging or doing things and acting the way you used to act, because the way I acted when I was drinking and drugging, to me, was, ugly. It was pathetic. And I can, unfortunately, I could still act that way sober. It's just a matter of keeping myself in check. And, 12 steps, everybody hears about 12-step programs. All the 12 steps are 12 tools. They're just 12 sentences or 12 tools that say, hey, just follow these directions. And this is what's going to get you sober or keep you sober. And basically, in paraphrasing the 12 steps, it's basically right living. It's doing the right thing as a human being. You don't have to be an alcoholic. It's just doing the right thing. Help your neighbor, do stuff. If you screw somebody over, pick up the phone or go see that person and say, hey, you know what? I did you wrong today. You probably don't know it, but this is what I did. I was wrong for doing it. And I just want, to say I was wrong for doing it. And that, when I started to do that, that was like an awakening of, oh my God, I'm changing. Because I used to be the guy that had all the answers, not just for me, but I also had the answers for you. When I started to realize that I don't have all the answers for people or myself, the funny, there's a funny story. In fifth day of treatment in Brighton, Michigan, we're in a counselor's running this meeting of like 12 of us, and we're all newbies. And she says, before we start, and she was, very well educated and, very professional, very knowledgeable, very good. And she says, before we start, I just want you all to know that your best thinking and your best planning got you to this room right here today. And I thought to myself, oh my God, she's right.
Wow.
And, it's kind of like a baseball bat across the face, right? Because it's like, she's right. She's exactly right. That vision of that, I'm going to build this grandiose empire and I'm going to, be the next this or that. And here I am sitting in a treatment center of all places, Detroit, Michigan. And you talk about a dose of humble pie and humility, and then being like, you know what? I know there's a God and I'm not it. And I need to start listening instead of start talking, and instead of continue talking, and start soaking some of this stuff in, because my best thinking almost got me killed. So I'm just a normal guy. I'm just a normal guy that takes things to extremes, except now I don't get, luckily, I could have been pulled over many times for DUI and stuff. I just never got caught back then when I used to drink. But today, you don't get pulled over for drinking too much Red Bull. You know what I'm saying? You don't get pulled over for drinking too much Diet Coke or whatever the case may be. So 80% of me is no different than anybody else. 20% of me, I would say, and that's just a number I'm throwing out, the minority of me that I'm talking about that's different. And that difference doesn't make me any better than anybody, and it doesn't make me any worse than anybody. It makes me me. And it makes me who I am and kind of how I'm wired and things like that. And I kind of refer to it as the dark side. That's the dark side of me. Now, if you can take that dark side and if you can harness it correctly, and if you can turn those vices into virtues, you can use it as a tool that will help millions of people. And, you know, the thing that you have to be very careful of is, and it's obvious, I mean, the story's out there. At one time, I used it as a tool it was all about me. It was me, what's in it for me. My favorite topic is me, you know, well, what about me? And it wasn't about, well, I don't care about anybody else. What about me? What am I getting out of this? And, you know, when sobriety and the miracle of sobriety happened, that paradigm shift happened of, no, it's not about me anymore. It's about what can I do for them, and them being everybody. And that doesn't mean just people in 12-step programs. It means everybody, like anybody I pass on the street. And it's like, I don't go around, you know, I mean, I don't want to, you know, convey the impression of that, you know, I'm going around helping every single person I see. It's just like, but if somebody needs help with something, and if I can do it, I'm going to do it, because I can't tell you how many people helped me, and I can't tell you how many people tried to help me. It's one of those things, the disease of alcoholism and drug addiction is an ugly, ugly disease, and it's a terminal disease, and it doesn't discriminate. And the greatest thing about that disease, though, is it's the only disease that exists that when it's tempered and tamed, never cured, but just in remission, you end up being a better human being than you probably were before you ever got to that point of that out of control drinking, where you can't probably do that with cancer. You can't do that with, you know, all these other diseases. You know, you can get healthy and live another 30, 40 years, but there's a part of you that will never be the same because of a disease like that, where in the disease of alcoholism, I almost feel fortunate that it's open. Like, I was at death's door many times, and, you know, back then, it was scary. It's scary now because it's like, it's waiting for me. All I have to do is pick up a drink and I'm off and running. And it's like, because, and I think part of that is, I think, you know, people that are extremists, if you will, and I'm talking about extremists in taking things to extremes with, you know, like one of the things I take to extremes is if I'm going to do something, and it could be, you know, whether it's photography, whether it's football, whether it's, doesn't matter what it is. It could be something, you know, minor, very like, something's entertainment, you know. I want to take it to the extreme. I want to do it. I want to be the best at it. And if I can't be the best at it, I want to be the best that I could be at it, like for me personally. So I would say most people don't think that way. And I don't consciously think that way. It just happened. I mean, it's just natural for me to think that way. It's like, why would you want to not be the best at something? And I don't want that to sound arrogant. It's just one of those things that I've been like that since I can consciously remember since I was 10, 11 years old. But why would I not want to be the best soccer player on the team? And why would I not want to be the best, you know, if I was playing goalie, why would I want to be the best goalie on the soccer team or the best forward or whatever the case may be? And this is, you know, and you know, and getting into some personal life stuff, because this is where it's a very fine line that can become very detrimental. And, you know, one of my biggest mistakes in sobriety, is I took things to extremes, and a lot of those extremes worked for my benefit. It brought me back to football. It kept me, it kept me humble and made me keep my mouth shut and, try to, close the door and close the chapter on that football career as best as I could. I don't think there were some things that just couldn't be corrected, but, I slayed the demons that I needed to slay. And then it was, kind of like next. What's next? Like, what's next on the list to do? And, and you do and you do and you do. But here was my biggest problem, my biggest mistake. I expected that out of my kids. I felt, and both my kids are beautiful girls, 27 and 20. And I expected that out of them because I was like, everybody's like this. Like that's, it was like my naiveness was, especially if it's somebody that's your daughter, like directly blood related, you're wired like this. It's like, you're not out there to get a participation ribbon. You're out there to kick some, what. And as long as you leave nothing on the plate and give it your all, before you even step on the field, if you've prepared and everything, you've already won internally. And if you lose the game by score, you've won because you've prepared, you've done everything in that's possible in your ability, whether it's watching film, in my instance, it was watching film, weightlifting, running, doing treatment, getting, your body, taking care of your body, making sure you go over the playbook, making sure you're on the same page with the offensive line and the center and Peyton Manning and Marshall Falk and all these guys, because, and that was your job. And when you did, and when you were prepared and Sunday came, you stepped on that field, there was no nervousness because you were prepared. And when I stepped on that field and I was nervous, I would ask myself, what did I not do enough of this last week to prepare for this? But and then, kind of bringing this back to my kids, I expected my kids to be like, my daughter is a phenomenal graphic designer and an extremely good photographer in Colorado now. And she travels, the whole country doing travel photography. And it's like, don't you want to be the best graphic designer? And don't you want to be like the best travel photographer? And, I asked her, what's like your dream job? And she's like, well, it'd be awesome to work for freelance for like a Nat Geo or Discovery or Channel or something that is just, they fly you wherever and you're just a freelancer and you spend 4 weeks in the mountains trying to shoot some leopard or goat that you rarely see and do nature photography. Like, that's her dream. And I'm like, well, then let's make a plan and execute it. Because, the cemetery is full of great dreams that were not executed because there was no action taken. So, I'm the type of guy that'll pull out the whiteboard and say, okay, here's where you are today. And how do we get to where you want to be? And then, of course, she has the fear that I have and the same fear that I would say probably 99.9% of everybody has. If you're on salary with a company and you do this, that means you're going to have to leave that job. And now you don't have that so-called imaginary security of salary. So we write the pros, we write the cons, we write the solutions, and then we look at all the options. And then it becomes down to now only you can make the decision. I don't want to give you advice. I can share my experiences with you and what I did that worked and what I did that didn't work. But the one part of my girls that is like me is that rebellious, don't tell me what to do. You can ask me the same thing you tell me, and I will bend over backwards and do it to the best of my ability. If you just say, hey, it'd be huge if you could do this for me, and I'd really appreciate it, I will go, so out of my way to help somebody, and I know a lot of people listening to this will relate to this, if not you guys yourselves, but then you have somebody on the delivery say, you need to do this. I'll do the opposite. I'll do the opposite just to prove to them that they don't have control of me. And, that I'm my own person and, I will do it. And then, unfortunately, those decisions, to be right instead of to be happy have hurt me. Like in the long run have ended up being, yeah, you want it to be right more than you want it to be, happy. And, but the best part about it is, even though you make mistakes, just because you get sober doesn't mean you don't make mistakes. You make mistakes, but you're aware of them, and you have now the option and the choice and some tools to do something about it if you choose to, or continue to make the same mistakes, which would be, unfortunate, because making the same mistakes when you're a train wreck is one thing, because I don't want to say you have an excuse, but you're a train wreck. You don't know up from down and everything's blurry. But when you're sober, you have clear eyes, got conscious thought, and you're willing to bounce things off people that you respect, that have no emotional attachment to your situation, and say, am I wrong in this? Am I right in this? How do you see this? And there's a handful, less than 3 or 4 people that I go to, things like this. And half the time, they're like, you're wrong about this. You're way out of line about this. And those are really your true friends that will be willing to tell you stuff like that, and that aren't like, what I would call a yes man. And because they care about you enough about your well-being and your family's well-being and your kids' well-being, where they'll say, hey, look, I know you're not going to get mad at me. I know you're not going to, be pissed off at me or not talk to me anymore. But I'm telling you what I see and what I hear. And from what I see and hear, you're way off base. So is that a short enough answer?
It's a heck of an answer. It's a great answer. And I appreciate you providing it. Unfortunately, there's so many other things that we wanted to talk to you about tonight, Tony, and that's not to say that what you just said isn't fantastic, because it absolutely is. What I hope that we have an opportunity is to catch up with you again sometime soon, because you're fantastic, and we'd sure like to get your insights and thoughts on some other things as well.
Anytime you guys want your ears to bleed for me talking, you just give us a call.
We will do that.
We will absolutely do that.
But yeah, no, it's a privilege. Listen, it's a privilege to be on your show and for you guys, and sometimes obviously can get a little bit long-winded, and I think it's because I'm passionate about what I talk about, and if I don't talk about it, I'm not passionate, and it'll be a yes/no answer.
It was great listening to everything you just said, and I'm sure you got a lot more great stories and insights to tell us, and we'd sure like to hear every one of them. So we hope you'll come back and join us again soon, Tony.
I absolutely will. If you guys want, just give me a shout. I'd absolutely be honored to. And if I was long-winded, I apologize. And
nothing to apologize for.
Hopefully the green and white boots tomorrow.
Thanks so much, Tony, for your time and your insights. We look forward to having you back on the show real soon.
All right, guys. Have a great night.
Good night.
Take care, Tony.
Bye-bye.
A lot to digest there, Bob, but great insights from Tony Mandarich, and a guy that I think is largely misunderstood, and I think the media has been largely unfair too, but it was really great hearing his insights there, and we got to get him back on real soon.
I hope we will. It's the stuff movies are made out of, and books and everything, and he's some fascinating guy.